Now, let's consider some of our other interesting topics. Let's look at the internal U.S. situation now, first of all. Let's look at U.S. domestic economics. The John Birch Society is riding high because we've got the Ryan budget. We've got Paul Ryan, reactionary Republican with fascistoid overtones, remember Romney's running mate, who has proposed his stinkburger budget. That's Obama's term. It's a good term, a stinkburger. Why not? This is the way the Republicans used to talk about the stimulus, the blankety-blank sandwich. All right, the stinkburger. And it is scandalous. So here's the idea. Paul Ryan wants to do the following. This is now genocidal austerity, and let me prepare you. You're going to hear a bill of indictment for high crimes against humanity under the Nuremberg Code that make Paul Ryan a Class A war criminal. The budget plan, first of all, is going to gouge Medicaid. Medicaid is going to be block granted. It's going to, in other words, it's going to be turned over to the wonderful states like Snyder of Michigan, Kasich of Ohio, Scott of Florida, and other raving reactionaries. It's going to be turned over to them, and it's going to be capped, so it cannot grow. So they're planning to save $125 billion by block granting Medicaid, turning it over to the states. They're going to gouge food stamps. Now, we had food stamps were gouged already last November. Food stamps are being gouged now, at least stupid Boehner tried to gouge them, although he apparently didn't know how to write the bill. He's so inept and dumb, John of Orange. So they wanted to cut food stamps a second time. It didn't work. Now they're going to come back and cut them a third time. I wonder if they're going to reach the 63% cut in food stamp spending that was the presidential program of the leprechaun, little Ron Paul, back in the fall of 2011. That, of course, would mean, as I said at the time, pellagra, rickets, scurvy, beriberi, from pellagra Paul. So we've got little Rand. We'll find a vitamin deficiency disease that he's going to bring about. So this is what Ryan is competing with. It's highly relevant. So Medicare, if you're on Medicare, gets set to be gouged. It's going to be called premium support. Premium support means you get a voucher. It means instead of having a guaranteed benefit, that is to say Medicare will pay 80% of any and all approved procedures, you're going to get a voucher that says this is worth X dollars, and then you're on your own. And then, I have the wonderful privilege of choosing. I can freedom to choose among different paths to the mortuary. That's great. But that's how this stuff is sold, right? The stupid American ideology. I want freedom to choose, even if it means that I take all the risk and I'm on my own. So the premium support voucher, that's going to be it. Military spending goes up by $483 billion. Non-defense discretionary domestic programs goes down by $800 billion. Ryan, of course, repeals Obamacare, except for the worst part of Obamacare. That he keeps, the cuts of Medicare, the money taken out of Medicare to support the rest of the program, which is, you see, he's not even siphoning into Medicaid. He's siphoning it into military spending. He wants workfare, slave labor programs for welfare recipients. Of course, there is no more welfare. The vote on this is supposed to be today, and it is the definition of class warfare, as Van Hollen says. But Van Hollen, you're not capable of class defense because you're not a class-based thinker. You're just playing word games. It turns out that the reactionary Republican tax expert Dave Camp is quitting. I hope that means that his monstrous program is going to go with him into that good night. We know that Ryan is emerging as this ideologue of opposition to the various Great Society anti-poverty programs. He's got strong racist overtones, and he's claiming to balance the budget by 2024, I believe, although his figures do not add up. He's got voodoo economics because he's saying, well, there's going to be such a surge of wonderful economic growth thanks to my program. The centerpiece, of course, tax cuts for the rich. Tax cuts for the rich. A top individual tax rate of 25%. Now, the demonization of the Koch brothers would be a matter of some public utility. Yes, indeed. We'll get to that in just a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So the reactionary Republicans, at least according to the schedule, today, Friday, the 4th of April, were supposed to be attempting to ram through this genocidal austerity budget built according to the criteria of the John Birch Society alumnus Paul Ryan and his racist wife, coming from a family associated with the George Wallace racist movement. And nobody brought that up when he started quoting Charles Murray in the bell curve or whatever it was. The Koch brothers are, generally speaking, behind this, right? Koch, the second largest privately held corporation in the United States. Koch and Koch, the two brothers, are in the top 10 in the world, I think, up there with Carlos Slim and Bill Gates and what have you. So Harry Reid has been attacking the Koch brothers, and I think this is an interesting initiative. Dingy Harry, of course, not my cup of tea, but still, a little bit of fighting could be a good thing. Demonizing the Koch brothers, allegedly, well, they are one of the centers of evil in this world, and they're hundreds of millions of dollars under Citizens United, and now under the latest monstrosity from the Rats Cabal, right? Roberts, Alito, Thomas, and Scalia. The Rats Cabal has put through the Supreme Court the idea that there can be no cap on contributions by plutocrats and predators to political candidates during the 2-year federal congressional election cycle. You can give to any of them, you can give to all of them, although it's still $2,600 per candidate. But now we have the self-righteous breastbeating of, I think it's Charles Koch. Yes, it's Charles Koch, who writes a letter to the Wall Street Journal of yesterday, celebrated, of course, by Limp Paw on the air. April 2nd, Charles Koch, I'm fighting to restore a free society. And he says, instead of welcoming free debate, collectivists engage in character assassination. Oh, the pot calling the kettle black. From what a pulpit do we hear this? This is somebody who has put hundreds of millions of dollars into attack ads, which are based on pure character assassination, lies, innuendos, distortions, omissions, and other mass dumbing down measures. So he's for freedom. He's for the freedom agenda. He's trying to understand the principles that enable people to improve their lives. I thought you were concerned about getting yourself rich and your disgusting family, this dreadful family of yours. 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson warned, I'm sorry, for most of his career, Thomas Jefferson was an ideologue of the nascent slave power. Thomas Jefferson wanted a weak federal government that would be too weak to interfere with slavery. That's what he was interested in for most of his life. Then there is this late in life confession that Hamilton had been right all along. Instead of encouraging free and open debate, collectivists strive to discredit and intimidate opponents. They engage in character assassination. I should know. I'm the target. Saul Alinsky, blah, blah, blah. This is the antithesis of what we need. Or is he un-American? Does he want to rig the system, yeah, he is un-American. The American way is a high standard of living, a high-wage economy. You believe, Koch, in a low-wage economy, which is a loser in today's world. Better learn Chinese. Write your next article in Chinese, because you'll become the viceroy of some Chinese regime here in the U.S. And then he's telling you how great the Koch industries are, how clean they are, and various other little points, creating real value for people, not for people, for your stupid shareholders, which means yourselves, because that's the way your company is held. Anyway, this is a self-righteous rant by Koch, and I think it would be a step forward for the Democratic Party. Certainly not adequate, certainly not programmatic, not what I want, but at least a step in the right direction to engage in a conflict with the Koch brothers, which could then, forces with greater mental clarity, could intervene in that and raise the level of class consciousness and make it programmatic. And I just would like to point to the Koch. Where did you get your money there, Charles Koch? Well, his father was this guy, Fred Koch, who basically had a procedure for catalytic cracking. Fine. He took that to the Soviet Union in 1929 to 1932 under Stalin in the initial phases of the 5-year plan. He later said, I didn't really like it, but he liked their money well enough. Then he became a big fan of Mussolini. The father of this guy was a great admirer of the Italian fascist dictator Mussolini, and of course he was a leading hater of Franklin D. Roosevelt, a hater of the New Deal, and a denier of the economic rights of the American people. That's Fred Koch. And he's also one of the founders of the John Birch Society. So we see from Ryan coming out of John Birch, the John Birch machine in Wisconsin, to Koch, the son of the founder of the John Birch Society, we can see what we're dealing with. And the other point is we can see that the money that Koch and Koch sank into libertarianism is coming back to help them. How would he defend himself? He says, I'm fighting for freedom. Freedom means I'm free to rape you, in effect, right? That's his freedom. He's talking about what used to be called not liberty, but license to abuse others, right? He's got the purview of freedom, and you have got the ability to simply undergo it, to be a rape victim at the hands of Koch. Now, this family, they're also the ones who put all the money into the Cato Institute, libertarianism. Remember that David Rockefeller brought over von Hayek to be his tutor, his ghostwriter, and von Mises to be a prof of some kind. So von Hayek and von Mises were the stooges of David Rockefeller to give him an ideology to defend his predatory antisocial practices, sociopathic practices. And with the Koch brothers, that was the Cato Institute, and then they got into a fight and they had to move on. Now, the American people want their economic rights. And if you have 7 million people who have signed up for Obamacare, I hope it means that some of them will live and not die and live to fight the fascist power of this Koch cartel. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. The demonization of the Koch brothers is richly deserved, and if properly catalyzed, can become a part of a growing class consciousness. But of course, the terms of the polemic must go far beyond those that have been broached by dingy Harry, and that is a point to intervene in. So Obamacare. I am for Medicare for all. Simple. One paragraph. Remove the age 65 limit. Make Medicare for all available to anybody, anytime. $100 per person per month if you've got a job. If you don't, if you're destitute, if you're unemployed, then for free. Medicare. The reason we must develop a labor force for the 21st century. If you want to have a labor force for the 21st century, People have got to have many years of advanced training, advanced degrees. You sink all that training into somebody, you can't afford to have them die. They must live. They must be healthy. They must work. We'll worry about the retirement stuff when the time comes. But for now, the main thing is to increase the longevity to begin with so that you can compete in a high-tech, scientific, technological world economy of the type that we hope to have and which we must have if the world is to survive. So we've got to increase longevity and increase rates of health in the workforce of this population. So we must develop our workforce, and making some kind of health care available is important. It comes down to that existential moment. What do you do under this system if you're over 26 or you have no parents that are not in the picture anyway, and you're less than 65, you lose your job, you got a pre-existing condition? What did you do before Obamacare? You were in hell. Now with Obamacare, you can at least get some form of medical assistance. So in spite of the sabotage, in spite of that Georgia insurance commissioner who said that his goal was to obstruct and to sabotage Obamacare, all the fascist Republican governors who would not expand Medicaid. There's a big fight going on in Virginia right now. The fascist Freemasons of Richmond, the cradle of secessionism, are fighting against Terry McAuliffe, Governor McAuliffe. McAuliffe at least is trying to bring in Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion. These fascist Republicans say no. I think some of them they're earning their tickets to Nuremberg in some future reckoning, or certainly at a later reckoning, which nobody escapes. They will have to answer for this. So 10 million people covered. Look, Kentucky, happy as Kentucky, in the discomfiture of Little Rand, and everything Little Rand stands for has been repudiated by the population of the bluegrass state. Kentuckians have signed up for Obamacare, and the rate of uninsured people in Kentucky has gone down by 40%. So that's a big dent in the health crisis of Appalachia and the coal fields and poverty that has gone on for generations. So good. Now, once you've got 7 million through the exchanges and 10 million in there, you have now got a block. You've got a vested interest in exerting and demanding the economic rights of the American people. That becomes a political fact. So it's then necessary, if these predatory insurance companies dare to raise their rates next year, if they turn their backs on the American people, then the American people will promptly turn their backs on the insurance companies. They will be nationalized as part of the Medicare for all, which is what we actually need. Or they'll simply be left to wither on the vine, take their rotten derivatives and their golden parachutes and their parasitical executives with them into the land of Pan Am, TWA, and all the other ones that are no longer with us, right? Studebaker, Packard, and so forth. Let them succumb to that wonderful creative destruction which the Schumpeterians so lewdly celebrate in other contexts. So there we have all of this. Right now, the Congress is still considering the emergency unemployment benefits beyond 26 weeks. They're talking about one that goes back to January, is retroactive, and it means by the time they pass it, it'll almost be expired. They want it retroactive to January, and it would therefore end in May. This is pathetic. Is this the class defense of the Democratic Party? This is terrible. And, of course, we do want the minimum wage increased, but not to $10.10. We want $15 an hour. That's a living wage in the United States today. Let me also remind you that one of the things that Ryan wants is to cut education. Ryan's education cuts in this budget that the Republicans are probably going to ram through the House today, $145 billion cuts in education. That I think on top of that, $90 billion in Pell Grants cut. Now that would solidify the class structure, the lack of social mobility here in the U.S. That would become a scandal. And Ryan wants you to start paying interest on your student loans immediately. As soon as you take out the loan, you start paying interest. You don't get the grace period, the surcease until you graduate. With Ryan, you start paying right away. Now, if there's a Democratic Party at all, and I'm not sure, they will hammer mercilessly on these points, right? If you're Medicare, if you have Medicaid, if you're a student with a Pell Grant, and on and on and on. If you want to have a country, then you better defeat those fascist Republicans as they come in. Now, the mass strike. We have the mass strike. I've been talking about it, the mass strike of 2014, 2015. So here we are in the spring of 2014, and we're headed, therefore, towards the beginning of a spring, which is already going to show this. Now, the mind benders, NATO intelligence, NATO counterintelligence, and their counterinsurgency operations have prepared a dog and pony show for dupes and cretins, and it's called the Worldwide Wave of Action, the Global Spring, and it's launched by Anonymous. Who is Anonymous? Nobody knows. They're anonymous, but the hypothesis might be advanced that they're simply a cognitive infiltration tentacle of the Central Intelligence Agency, MI6, DGSC, BND, and so forth. Now, the point of this is we've got the corrupt and decadent and thoroughly discredited Russell Brand attempting to attach himself to this. Who else do we have? We've got Eminem. Poor Eminem hasn't been getting any play. We've got Ice Cube. We've got a guy called Korn, or something called Korn, and presumably the children of Korn, of the Korn, will be showing up. This is supposedly, what it is in reality is to essentially hijack anybody who's developing real political insight, real leadership skills, real programmatic ideas, and put them back to this stupid, generic, Oedipal, anarchist kind of nonsense. So look, this is worse than Occupy. I just want to point this out. Occupy at least had the idea, the 1%, the 99%. At one point during Occupy, that secret headquarters they had, the counterinsurgency headquarters, the Vancouver, British Columbia Adbusters Foundation, put out a call saying, let's have a day of struggle for the financial transfer tax, transaction tax, the Wall Street sales tax, the Robin Hood tax, whatever they called it. But now this has disappeared. There's nothing about war. There's nothing about class. There's nothing about oligarchy. There's nothing about depression, unemployment, or anything. And I'll tell you some of the fatuous slogans in just a minute. Dulcis in fundum. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now let's quickly get the profile of this idiotic counterinsurgency plan called the Worldwide Wave of Action, the Worldwide Wave of Dupes and cretins and brain-damaged anarchists, Oedipal personalities. And again, they've thrown out any content that Occupy Wall Street actually did develop, but they want to go out and move out and do it, right? The most primitive adolescent, sub-adolescent. Here are their slogans. Can you hear me wherever you are? We are coming into the new world, the glorious future. The solar planet has been given wings. On April 4th, a global spring begins. Moment of clarity, our time has come. Begin to form affinity groups and then do it. Affinity groups were the CIA, FBI strategy to begin breaking up SDS here in the United States in 1968. And then, of course, let's create a culture of transformation. Oh, my gosh. Again, nothing about the world economic depression, nothing about Ukraine, nothing about Syria. And here's what they say. We are a leaderless movement. Why are you a leaderless movement? You never developed any leaders? What about these characters, such as they were in 2011 there at Zuccotti Park? We are a leaderless movement. We do our own thing. Oh, my God. I am me. We want a new paradigm. Joe Sixpack now wants to know, what's a paradigm? But that paradigm is not clearly identified, nor is it coupled with concrete proposals. So 3 years later, still no program, no demands, no nothing. And they want Martin Luther King and Charlie Chaplin. The decentralized movement towards freedom is raging across the world. And now for 3 months, we're going to have these lunatics. They say they're the cool thing to do. They're where it's at. They're the global spring. And it's all brought to you courtesy of Anonymous. Well, the beauty of Anonymous is any intelligence agency that decides to call itself Anonymous can come out. But the one thing we do know is that Anonymous is supporting the fascists in Ukraine. They love right sector. They love Svoboda. They don't like Yanukovych. You get the idea. It's anti-Russian. It's a desire to project that into the Russian Federation. Now, it will fail. So it's springtime. The birds are singing. The brook is babbling, and the saps are running to the worldwide wave of action with the new paradigm, courtesy of Eminem. Of course, the idea is the color revolution is what? The color revolution is you want to destroy a society, you're not strong enough, or you don't dare to attack them with military means, so you wish to induce them to destroy themselves. How do you induce a society to destroy itself? You appeal to the Oedipal, infantile, cretinous impulses of youth in the springtime and launch something like this. So I urge people to stay away from this. This is so smelly. This is much worse than the original Occupy. And, of course, when you got these smelly characters like Russell Brand around there, that is really bad. Now, a programmatic point. I don't think we're going to get to much Wheeler Bennett on Ukraine today. I wanted to do we do have to watch out. Just one thing, right? Obama was in Saudi Arabia, and according to our dear friend David Ignatius of the Washington Post, out of this, it is likely that the U.S. is going to escalate the arming of the terrorist death squads in Syria. This is Sunday, March 30th here in the Washington Post. The U.S. would be training the Free Syrian Army to combat al-Qaeda and to try to sift them out. But the centerpiece is this. 5 man pads, 5 shoulder-launched missile launchers would be videoed. They would have a tracking device. They would have a remote shutdown mechanism. This is Ben Rhodes, right, the little enemy of civilization in the White House there. This is the guy who tried to do the television coup in Syria in July of 2012. It failed, but he's coming back on Syria. And Obama still has concerns about man pads falling into the wrong hands. 5 missile launchers are going to be given to the terrorists of the Free Syrian Army. Well, Obama, you want to get impeached? You want to be hung out to dry? You want to be twisting in the wind? Just go ahead and do this. 5 man pads. How about an Israeli airliner? How about a Turkish airliner? How about, well, you can go on from there, right? Anybody who goes over the Eastern Mediterranean is going to be a sitting duck for those man pads. And when the Malaysian airliner is going to turn out to be a picnic compared to the monstrous consequences of giving those missile launchers to terrorists in Syria. And once they go in, believe me, you can't control them. And your allies, the Free Syrian Army, those are the wimps. The Nusra brigades, the ISIS, the Islamic Front, they're the ones who are going to get them. And Obama, once they put them into action against perhaps the Israelis, that's the end of you. You're going to have you're going to be crucified on television every day because it'll be the Malaysian airliner to the 10th power, and you're going to be responsible. So don't do it. And by the way, we don't want to placate or ingratiate ourselves with these Saudi monsters. And there, I would also say concerning this Palestinian-Israeli negotiation with Kerry, no freedom for Jonathan Pollard except a final status agreement, which includes the ending of all the Israeli settlements, the creation of an independent Palestinian state, fully sovereign, with a Marshall Plan from Europe, the U.S., and China to rebuild the entire area. And it includes the Israelis. Yes, it does. The entire area has got to be rebuilt. If you want to put Pollard on the top of that as the cherry on the cake, that's fine. But not, at this point, no. It means the final status agreement of everything, and they need a piece of Jerusalem, as we know, and all of that has got to be finessed. But now, we have two interesting things. One is a book called Flash Boys. We've got a book about high-frequency trading, and it's highly relevant, right? We're very much against high-frequency trading. We're coming up to the 4th anniversary of the flash crash of May 2010, which was, as you remember, a machine, an infernal machine of derivatives, which was designed to destroy the euro, and it began to destroy the euro compared to the yen, but then it also destroyed the Dow Jones averages, and that was the flash crash. So this is called Flash Boys by Michael Lewis, and we've got all sorts of traders telling you what to do. The only answer to this is the 1% Wall Street sales tax. 1% Wall Street sales tax on all stocks, bonds, derivatives, and any other transaction, and that's the only way to do it. And I have to say, I think we had Ralph Nader interviewed on one of the cable news programs, and he did have the decency to say in the telephone interview that it would take a financial transaction tax or speculation tax, as he called it, is the only way to suppress high-frequency trading, flash trading, and these exotic forms of program trading. Now, an interesting theoretical issue, in addition to this Flash Boys, and by the way, Flash Boys is coordinated, as so often happens, with the FBI. The FBI is opening and here we have it in the Wall Street Journal of April 1st. Wall Street Journal, FBI investigates high-speed traders. Probe in the early stages focuses on whether companies are taking advantage of inside information. Well, of course they are, and they've got to be taxed out of existence, and some of this stuff can also be banned. But tax is easier to enforce. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. What I want to discuss, though, and we'll discuss next time, is this book called Capital by Thomas Piketty. Let's call it Piketty's Charge. Piketty's charge is that historically the real productivity of an economy grows at 1.1 to 1.5%, but the average return on property titles, on investment claims, is between 4 and 5%. So that's a recipe for crisis. Well, Piketty, it's much worse because you're assuming that